pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, welcome everyone. First meeting since school started, so it's always exciting to get the school year off and running. Trustees, do you have any comments or questions, requested changes on the agenda? Okay, we are going to start with presentation. We are super lucky to have Janet, is it Reese?
It's RIS.
Riss.
Yep, thank you.
I think I asked you the same question last year. I probably
It's very
might do it
common.
again.
Very
But
common.
we're happy that you're here, and the Angel Fund provides a really great service to our students in need. So I'll let Janice take it from here.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. For those of you here, you have our hot off the press newsletter with our year in review from last year. So take a look at that. I'll give you some stats myself today. But just as a reminder, the Angel Fund has 4 programs. So we have grown that we are actually starting our 34th year. When this was just a little spark in Marcia's world, Marcia Wall, founder, created. 34 years now, we're 4 programs and $250,000 that was given to students just last year. And that's in those 4 programs. The program we just completed is the Stuff the Bus campaign. As you probably all are aware of that one. It's all summer long and we have fundraisers all summer long. It did go to monetary giving through COVID. It has stayed that way because the schools and the teachers get to purchase exactly what they need, exactly when they need it. So instead of being short the actual Crayola crayons and getting, they get exactly what they need. And we encourage them to purchase local. We have merchants in town that do appreciate that. So we do ask that. And then that we were able to grant about $48,000 for this year. And that is due in part to all of our community partners. Valley Bank does a special $5,000 match for us. They did a special campaign day for us, so that was great. But so many donors in the community helped us to reach that goal. So we also bought extra Texas Instrument calculators for a school. So whatever the need is, we can hopefully get that filled for school supplies. Our next campaign that actually opened up the first day of class would be our running shoes, Running for Montana's Future. And that is a partnership through our school resource officers in the Helena Police Force. And simple application to fill out one page to say what size shoe they wear. And that is done with the Angel coordinators, the counselors in each of the Helena School District schools. And they really work in partnership with the PE teachers too to see who might need a pair. This program is not limited to just free and reduced lunch. It's anybody who is in need of a pair of tennis shoes. So that one kicked off the very first day. We do have our, we had 185 running shoes purchased last year. So that was up from any other year. So that's great. The word's getting out on that one. And it helps to spread the dollars further as well, because then we have our clothing campaign, which is kind of where it all started. That one opens up October 2nd, is a Monday. So that one opens up then. It's only in the Helena School District, and it is $150 for back to school clothes shopping for elementary kiddos, and then $200 for middle and high school students. It runs October 2nd through November. We have 4 amazing partners in the community: Walmart, TJ Maxx, Target, and Old Navy. This is the unique program because nobody really knows about it as far as, the student gets to go and pick out their own clothes. You remember back to school shopping and how exciting that was. The counselor and the family fills out a one-page application. The family goes and purchases what they want, and then the Angel coordinator, the counselors at the school goes and pays for it with our credit card, and then the family goes and picks it up. So nobody knows anything different, which is amazing and awesome, and it makes them feel pretty proud. Little kids especially come in and show their counselors their brand new clothes, and they're so excited. So a very special program. The fourth program that we've expanded into is our scholarships, and this is for Helena High School, Capital High School, PAL Access, and last year we added East Helena High School, their first graduating class. And this is almost all donor funded. So we have donors that give scholarships. They range $1,000 to $3,000 or $4,000 depending on the year. And we had over $41,000 that we were offered to our graduating seniors in those schools to attend a Montana high school. Montana college or university, trade school, 2-year school, technical. So those 4 programs this last year, over $250,000 to our Helena and Greater Helena area students. So pretty exciting. We can't do it without the community. We have 4 fundraisers coming up to put on your watch list, save the date. Copper Furrow is October 3rd. Confluence, the Two Brothers downtown, every Sunday in October is bingo, family-friendly bingo, and then Missouri River Brewing bingo is November 28th. My eyesight's going. And our biggest one of the year is always our On Broadway night. 50% of the food proceeds, they generously donate back to us. And we have an auction as well. We do it online a couple weeks ahead. And then in person, you can see the items as well. So would love to have you all join us for all of those. If you have any questions, reach out to us. And one last plug, it's new as of last year. Thanks to the school district, we are able to do payroll deduction directly to Angel Fund. If any school district employees are interested in that, we have 3 currently and would love to grow that. It's the easiest way to give besides online on our website as well. So thank you for all of your support. We absolutely could not do it without our school district support. The Angel coordinators that we have are amazing. There's over 20 of them. About 26 of the Angel coordinators are our angels on the street. So we couldn't do it without them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Ms. Riss? I just thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's a lot of funds that goes to our kids, and I like the way that they get to be treated and felt like it's their own money and they get to do their own thing. And you do a lot. Do you do a lot for the winter clothing too? The
Yes.
Coats? I mean, I think that's a big one. A lot of kids will come ready to school for the fall, and then winter
Right.
comes and they don't have boots or snow pants or
Right.
coats or.
So when I first started with Angel Fund, I thought it was odd. It started in October, but then I was told the reasons why, and it makes total sense. A lot of those winter clothes aren't out yet. It's the summer sales. And so we really want to make sure they have the clothes to last throughout the academic year. Also, they do need to be free and reduced lunch for the clothing. So that notification is a little later in. They also have to be maintaining satisfactory attendance. So that is certified by the counselors that they're getting to school and attending. So that does help as well. We partner with the Exchange Club also for boots and coats for elementary school kiddos. So there's an online form with Exchange Club, and they fill out, the school does, how many coats and boots and sizes. And that way, it again helps us stretch the dollars because they can get the running shoes from our Running for Montana's Future program. They get the clothes from the Angel Fund campaign, and then they can get coats and boots as well at the elementary school kids through Exchange Club. So using all of these partners, we're working together to make sure they're taken care of. So.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
Thank you for having me.
extend our thank you to your whole team.
I will. Thank
Okay.
you. Oh, and part of my team is here. So Nick Radley is a board member as well, and Steve Dennis. So they are here.
Great.
They are board members. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have our recognition. First one, 2023 Shape Montana High School Teacher of the Year. Principal Zanto, would you like to tee this up for us?
Good evening, members of the board. I would like to first of all just say thank you for taking the time to honor such an educator as Mr. Hageman. Mr. Hageman has been such a strong advocate of physical education, curriculum, health curriculum for many years, and I know he's a very important member of the state Shape Montana organization. So I would like to invite Mr. Hageman up here to the podium so that he can talk more about Shape Montana, as well as to talk about his award of being named the PE Teacher of the Year for the state of Montana. So at this time, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Hageman.
Excellent. Right? I'll give some to you later. It's not a huge,
well, thank you for making time to do this tonight. This is fun. It's kind of an interesting and humbling thing to be recognized among your peers when you know so many of them and the great work that they're doing across the state of Montana and beyond. So I still kind of feel weird about it to some degree, but this is my 8th year on the Shape Montana board that stands for Society of Health and Physical Educators. I've been the advocacy lead for all 8 years I've been on the board, and am finishing my second round of 3-year term of president. So it's been busy, but it's been an extremely rewarding time for me in my professional career, getting to know folks across the nation and in Montana, and kind of seeing the state or the shape of the nation, if you will, across Montana. I just feel really fortunate. This is year 20 in Helena Public Schools. This is my 20th year. Taught Luke's board member Hindoin's kids. I've taught Chair Hathorn's kids. Superintendent Hathorn, funny story, found my child in a clothes basket. We thought she had gone, and we're hollering and rounding up the neighbors, and the cops were there, and Chair Hathorn came running, and the cops were encouraging us to look in the house again, and we didn't want to look in the house. We did that already, and Chair Hathorn went in, and our daughter had fallen asleep in a clothes basket with a bag over not a bag, a blanket over her, and we didn't see her.
That was
So
scary.
that was really scary. Yeah.
Good ending.
So very great ending, you know. Bumping into board member McKee at Green Arts Montessori, pick up with our kids and climbing, and, you know, working with board member Cletus on some health initiative stuff probably 5-6 years ago. I mean, it's a really great community, and I just feel super fortunate to be a part of it. And, you know, we're all just ready to roll up our sleeves and go to work for whatever's next. So I just want to say thank you, and appreciate being here this evening, and thank you for the work that you do every day. So, yes.
Our next recognition is the 2023 Girls High School Track and Field Coach of the Year, Principal Tennis.
So I don't see Coach Zentz here yet at this time. I know he had practice this evening, so I could speak for an hour until he gets here, if that is okay with everyone. No. So good evening, members of the board. It's an honor to be here tonight to recognize Coach Zentz as the 2023 Girls High School Track and Field Coach of the Year for the state of Montana. Well-deserved is an understatement. Coach Zentz serves as the head coach for both our women's cross country team and women's track and field. Although his teams have captured back-to-back state championships in track, the trophies and medals are an incredible accomplishment, but it pales in comparison to the culture he has built in his programs. If you want to follow a place where kids truly belong, give him a follow on his social media platform. It's my pleasure to introduce the 2023 Girls Track and Field Coach of the Year, Coach Jesse Zentz.
fill in before.
Go Bengals.
You know what? I'm gonna keep this. So we'll I say that we acknowledge him when he walks in.
Okay.
In
Sounds
between.
good.
That sound right?
All right.
It's recorded.
All right, we'll circle back to that. Next, we have a very succinct superintendent report, right?
I think that was
Superintendent
a
Welch?
suggestion. Yeah, let me get organized here. Madam Chair, trustees, again, we had talked earlier in executive meeting that this is fairly lengthy, but as we noted, kicking off school year through the summer work and then into officially our first full week at school. We went to a 3 and a 4, now a 5-day week. A lot taking place. So I'll get through this quickly, or as quick as I can, but with all due respect to people that we're recognizing as well. First of all, I think it'd be remiss not to acknowledge the event yesterday in the 22nd year reunion of 9/11. And so I think it's important to note that as we talked about, I was at HEF last night and with the board. It's interesting that it seems like it was yesterday. I can tell you where I was in multiple times of historical events that have taken place in my life. Columbine, Elvis, if you will. I remember where I was, and obviously I was in Kodiak, Alaska, as an athletic director and high school teacher, 9/11, 2001. It's of importance to note that our students were not alive when this event took place. Now we've moved that generation through, and so it's interesting that although we know about it, it's interesting for me. It was yesterday, and yet not even in some of our students or most of our students' lives. So I do not want to forget. I want to make sure that we acknowledge that. As I said, as I move through here, the first full week of school. There were some things that took place, and it was great to get out that first week of school before all of our students came back. And I want to report that our LINK programs, where we bring 6th grade and 9th grade, that was got a chance to get out and see our seasoned students working with our most inexperienced. And so we saw a lot of building of toothpicks and marshmallows and just really building culture and teams. And making students feel welcome. So I'd love to see that both at the high school and the middle school level. I put down kindergarten, not to disregard all of the other staff members, but really that kindergarten, that first week of school, last Tuesday was their first day, and structures and routines. And that is so important for our kindergarten students that they're coming in and learning how to be a student. So super important to see our kindergarten staff working with all of our youngest ones. It is National Substitute Appreciation Week. I think it's important to note that I use this as a recruiting tool. We're always looking for substitutes. We can never have enough, and we're thankful for the ones that we have. They really do keep our schools running. Ask our HR department. It is National IT Professional Day, September 19th. We will remember them as well on that date. I want to thank admin, teacher, staff, students, and families. Really had a fantastic start. It was a really good energy. A lot of positivity around the district. So I want to thank all of them. An interesting email I got last month is our court system has an opportunity for our community to pay off debt and fines with food. And so all that food is being donated back to our schools and food pantry programs. And so I want to thank them as well. There's a common theme through the recognition pieces here, and it's really HEF. And so you'll hear me say it several times. Like teachers, the startup, there's a lot of activities going on, and Helena Education Foundation is in the middle of all of it. They literally are. First of all, thanks to the Helena Education Foundation for providing, I will say it again, 80 dozen treats that went around through the district. And Siobhan, I think Janet and my team, we all toured for 2 days and got to see students and staff in the buildings. We also brought treats, and single-handedly, Lisa accordingly organized bakeries, treats, plattering, and delivery. And so there was a lot of work around that. So we want to thank Lisa and her team. Angel Fund, Janet, the 48,000 Stuff the Bus. that's one program, but the other ones, when I was at Rosser, it really struck me as the anonymous monies that went to school clothing so children can shop. And that was really important. So I want to thank Janet and her team as well, Nick and Steve on that board. Again, Helen Education Foundation and Valley Bank. We have a new president in town, Mark Anderson, I believe, is the president of Valley Bank. He was here with us at the start of the new educator orientation. We want to thank their service along with HEF. And also Mark and I got a chance for the first time in 3 years, I got to jump on the tour train and ride that through town. And we stop at Chaudère and Chamber and multiple places with our new educators just to introduce them to places throughout the town. It went well. We upped our ante on the secretary and substitute new educator training. And a lot of that work was through the central office. Our team here really supported all of our new educators, but also our secretaries and substitutes. And I want to thank them for their efforts. It made a difference. It really made them feel special and something we haven't done in a while. So it was really important to do that. So thank you for our team up here. Again, Helen Education Foundation for Fabulous First. I was able to get to Broadwater and we were able to open books. Again, they're first graders got a book. Actually, Miss Bodecker read to them first, and then they got a book that was wrapped. They got to unwrap it, and someone read them a book. And the joy of a young student getting their first book that they get to take home was pretty special. They split up. So Rebecca and Lisa went to Kessler and Broadwater at the same time. So they tricked me. I couldn't get to both places, but Broadwater out in their garden area was really pretty special this afternoon. Congratulations. We had Capitol High and Helen High All-State Music Festival going on. Things that I also want to put down, Helen Education Foundation participating in the admin startup meeting. Lisa was able to speak there, and also for a really great Sunday Carnival Classic last week. You could have asked for better weather. Last year was a little warm, but this year was really spectacular. And so I want to thank HEF for that as well. Moving on to new business, and there was a lot of new business. Right now, we're in the middle of configuring our enrollment. That A and B is really important to us, and we always keep an eye on it. As we talked about in our Budget and Finance Committee today, we predominantly will always be right around that 7,800 students. After East Helena had moved into a new high school, from 8,000 to 8,100, now we're going to see 76 to 78, probably most of our term here, unless something drastic changes such as housing and or industry. And right now we're sitting at about 7785, but that number still is being fine-tuned as we get through our Power School cleanup. So I'll keep you posted on that. To no real surprise at this point. I'm serving as the AA superintendent representative on House Bill 332 steering committee, if you will. Bozeman sent their business manager, so did Butte. There's a teacher out of Billings, a teacher out of Missoula. And then the Must insurance team was there as well. And we're really studying if House Bill 332, which is the health insurance, the pool of health insurance, is amenable or applicable to particularly AAs. Does it make sense for us to not be in a self-funded plan and move into more holistic pool plan? I don't know the answer. We don't know that answer yet, but we are getting information to make that determination. There'll be more information on this. Alliant Insurance Services, they are the consultant that's helping us walk through those and answering the questions if this makes sense. And so I'll have more information on what that looks like. We went in ignorant in the fact that there's some concerns, the flexibility and the ownership of that, and what does it look like, and how many seats do the AAs have at the table in terms of the governance body. Those are all questions we asked, or I asked, and we have some answers. And so I'll report back later on what that looks like. We are still in the middle of our, we had mediation last week. We have another mediation round scheduled for September 27th and still moving forward. We're keeping eyes open and trying to find that resolution coming up. Budget Recommendation Consensus Committee, we're meeting on the 14th, and we have another scheduled 27th, so 2 this month. More to come on that as well. I would say that our last meeting, we had Pat McCracken, which is a research analyst for the Montana Legislative Services. He writes a lot of bills for our legislators around school funding. He presented just School Finances 101. He used a bucket and some bricks or blocks of wood, and it did make sense. The visuals helped, but I know that there's PTOs across our district that are asking him to come present just to the parent groups as well, because he's pretty effective. We know Rob Watson and I are going to film him as the next presentation and have that as a means for us to be able to see it here as well. And so I'll share that when we get it, granted with his approval. Right. Well, we have a master master facilities plan stakeholder meeting on the 27th as well. That's coming up soon. We talk a lot about reductions and how we're making ends meet with our budgets, particularly around the general fund. But I also want to make note, and I will continue to stand on this, is that we're also finding and looking for strategic ways to build revenue within our district. So we're not going to just find our way through here by reducing services, but we also need to find ways that we're going to increase revenue. And so every 10 years, legislation needs to look at school funding, and we are planning for that next session, not in a month in advance, but we're starting now on what avenues can we start addressing so that we're prepared to move forward when the body comes back to the Capitol. More to come on that as well. Through the summer, my team, and solely my team, did a lot of work, and here's where they were. We landed on having transition centers, and that's I talk a lot about hope. And when you wake up as a junior and you're short of credits, options are limited. You lose a little hope that you're going to make it through. And so our transition centers, in hopes that we don't lose students, are at both Helena High and Capitol this year. And they are opportunities for students that are behind credits or needing a way of extra support that they can get that. And so we'll flesh that out more. We've had it in our teaching and learning committee, but Mr. McKay, Ms. Hess had been working on those programs starting out this year. Lana Carter's work around mental health centers. We have five sites right now that are ready for mental health supports, PAL, 2 high schools, 2 middle schools. Super important for the unfunded need for students around mental health. It's not there. We don't have that financial relief from the state or feds. And so we're making it up as we go. But one thing we did say, no is not an option. We know kids need it. So how are we going to figure it out? And so Ms. Carter, Mr. McKay has done a lot of work with our building principals to make this work. I think we're close now to Handle with Care. I've reported back a couple of times on this. So Handle with Care is when a student has a really rough time and a law enforcement agency or an officer is involved. They have a method to let us know as a district that they had a really bad night and call it Handle with Care. It's a national program, and it's one that we've looked at here for several years. I want to thank Helena Police Department, the city of Helena, for partnering with us to make this work. And so Mr. Meyer put together a training video this week on here's the link, here's the password, this is what we need. And so it should be operational this week. And I'm thankful for that. We also we looked at our data. So Ms. Hess in data assessment curriculum noticed that our 3, 4, and 5 math scores are not where we want it to be. And that's the beauty of benchmarking. We know where we're at and we can make course corrections. So in lieu of that, and support we've talked about, we've had a TOSA, teacher on special assignment, that's working specifically around supporting math curriculum, particularly around that 3, 4, and 5. And that's come to fruition. Well, we've had a literacy grant through OPI for about 6 years, and it's coming to an end. It sunsets, and that funding is going away. And so at the end of this literacy grant, we have a product that we need to produce. And so we have 2 halftime TOSAs, teacher on special assignment, that's helping Ms. Davidson finalize that project and supporting our staff to get that done. So it's really important that we finish that up. None of this is general fund supported. These are all either grant supported or the remaining ESSER dollars to do that. All right, homelessness. We hear a lot about it. It's gained traction, a lot of interest in our community. And I would say that we were ahead of that game prior to the community seeing what we're seeing currently in Helena. Homelessness normally in a year that we track it would be 50 students at best. Last year, we finished with 396 roughly. We always start at 0. We don't pull them back over from last year and know what we identify every year from 0. Before the first week of school, we were at 50, and I think right now we are at 150. So we're at above our average in the first week of school. We haven't had our first week of school, and so we're sitting about 150, and we probably predict that we'll be in that 400 range. Knowing that, Ms. Hess and our team are providing structure around supports for our students that are unsheltered, and so there's a lot of work being done around that. I think Board Chair Hawthorne and others, probably Mrs. Entz, is presenting tomorrow afternoon. But
Yeah, there's a community
Yeah.
book study, and
Okay.
there's an educational component that Michelle Zentz and I will be just ask questions, part of a panel.
yeah, so it's important to note to the community and to our staff that there are supports for our students that are unsheltered. That kind of, again, another support, English learners, ELL, EL, or multilingual learners. We also notice that we have an increased a number of students that fit that identity. We have 4 families that are refugees, roughly 8 to 10 students that do not speak English. We have multiple language speaking students that are English is not their first language, and so we have Ms. Tucker is through our title programs and Ms. Hess direction. We have a full-time staff members that are working with our English learners, and so there's another support mechanism for those students. Policy, here's a good one. So the work this summer around policy session ended, 22-23 session ended. Typically, there's 40 to 50 bills that affect education at the end of the session. This year, there were 169 bills that affected education, 99 in which the coalition took a position on. Those 99 affect education. Those 99 changed the rule book on our policy and our handbooks. Hence, Ms. Ridgway has been really busy and continues to be busy. I think there's 6 policies tonight that we will come up with that we start out with, but there are a slew of others. I will warn you, we found the ones that were not going to take a lot of time to discuss early, and we'll move through the complexity of them as we go into this school year. But there's a lot of work around the 99 that we need to identify and how they affect schools. Career and technical education. So the longer our team stays together, the more focus we get on the peripherals. We're now putting an emphasis on our career and technical education, our CTE programs. Ms. Hess, Mr. McKay have put together an emphasis of where we're going with it. Quite frankly, in your green folder, there's a CTE that report that talks a lot about where we're at currently with our career and technical education. You can see that in there. Later for your enjoyment reading. That is the work of taking a closer look at and prioritizing our CTE programs. On top of that, Ms. Carter is working on 6-8 pathways for exploratory opportunities for our middle school, and then Ms. Hess is also doing that with our 9-12 pathways, and you can see that in there as well. Super important, especially in a portrait of a graduate. What does it look like for students that are in that career band? And so this is going to help us with that work ahead. Lastly, it's not in there, and this came in late, but we're also adding into our comms, our communication plan. Here's some adds to it. We are going to add department level updates. So that means out of technology, curriculum, chief of staff, HR. I will embed those twice a month into my staff newsletter to our community of Helena Public Schools, right? Including, then I'm also going to send out a student email updating where we're at, what's taken place 6/12. So all of our students have an email address, and I'm going to write them an email. We're going to update our student body just through an email. It's old school. It's not Instagram. It's not X. It's not Twitter, but it's going to be just an update to our staff. And so we've added that complexity to our communication plans. The chief of staff and I I don't know if she's agreed to this, but she's going along with, we're going to attend, we got an invite, and we did last year, to all of our student president club meeting. And so we want to be part of those meetings. We had a conflict yesterday or day before, I think maybe it was with Luna. We want to be part of those. And so when we build our schedules, we'll make sure that we're part of your president's meetings. We want to hear what you have to say. And Miss Ridgway is really great at bringing pizzas. And then lastly, we're going to have a submission to the IR, a monthly superintendent column to the community through the IR. And that's the work out of, all of this work is really out of Karen Ogden, our communication specialist, and Miss Ridgway. I just get to reap the benefits of all that. So their hard work is paying off for us as well. And then as you can see on down through the list, there's a lot going on in outreach and meetings. I would add one that happened yesterday. Our governor visited Bryant Elementary. I was able to get up and visit with him. Miss Maxwell was gracious in hosting the governor, and really they wanted to see two things. They wanted to see our Kindersprouts program. That's at early K. There's 18 4-year-olds in Bryant right now under that special circumstances, which then transitions. This is last year. Then we'll transition into the early literacy piece, and that's another revenue source that we're looking at in the future. The green folders in front of you. You got the Montana school funding. I sent it out in an email, but I do want you to look at it. It's in comparison to where other states and how they fund their education. District facilities summer recap. Todd, Mr. Verrill and facilities had a really great presentation around all the summer work. That's included in your green packet for reading. The CTE reports in there. You can, I sent this before, but you can see the 2023-24 admin duties sheet. And then you also see the district org chart in that. I would urge you to take a look at the admin duties. The amount of duties listed under some of my team is staggering. And I appreciate them immensely. That is my succinct superintendent report. Thank you.
Questions for Superintendent Welts? Trustee Armstrong.
Not a question, but really a comment, because I was going to ask you about how can we highlight these things, because there's just like so much good stuff, but I see you guys are ahead of the game. So I just want to thank you, superintendent and team, because it's one of the things I ran on was improving communication, and I know the superintendent's been very hot to trot on that. And there's just so much stuff going on in a district, so many facets, whether we're talking about CTE, whether we're talking about homelessness support, or we're talking about mental health support, or we're talking about testing scores. It's just, there's just so much information. I appreciate you guys trying to find ways to put it more bite-sized so that families have time to look at it and know that there's help for them, that there's options for them, and to know what the school district's doing. So I just want to thank everyone, school district and community partners, for what they do to help us.
Thank you, Trustee Armstrong. Tell me your last name again. Hernandez. Luna Hernandez.
Okay, so just to clarify, the Handle with Care program is a point where students can like tell their educators that they had a bad night.
Good question. By the way, we probably need to add this to my student update of what this is. Thanks for the question. So Handle with Care is a program where two scenarios for you, if you may. First scenario is a elementary student is home and it's 2 o'clock in the morning and there's a domestic dispute and someone's going to jail, and student is probably not going to be with their parent that night. A law enforcement officer is in the middle of this and lets us know that Rex Welts, age 12, had a really bad night. They log onto our website. We hit the Handle with Care button, have a password. It comes to, it says Rex Welts, bad night, age 12. And it comes to our office. Our office looks at that, finds out who your brother and sister, cousins if they live with you, and we let that school know that I had a really bad night. So the principal and the teacher and the counselor all know that you're walking into school probably not ready for school. And so as a young elementary student, we're going to make sure that you're fed, you get some rest, you got clean clothes, you brush your teeth, you are ready for school before we plug you into the school. Okay, that's the scenario around a young one. A high school student, as a high school principal and teacher, I have a student, I've been notified that Luna had a bad night. And so when you are not on point or you're sleeping on your desk, which Mr. Welts would never let you do in science, I would not come and blow you up and say, get your head off. You know better than that. I would say, look, I know you had a rough night last night. We can figure this out. That test is not that important. We'll figure this out later, but at least your teacher knows what's going on. And so that's the scenario on both. It's really law enforcement issues. If you have a bad night as a student, I would like for you to be able to have that adult connection in your building that you could go to someone and say, oh, it sucked last night. I really had a rough night. I need some help. But this is more about law enforcement letting us know that they just literally blew up a house.
Okay.
Does that help?
And law enforcement officers could find that resource like on the Helena Public Schools website.
Yes.
Okay.
You can see that on the Helena Public Schools. If you go to the front page, scroll down, there's a big red button. The only thing is you can't log in because you don't have the password.
Okay. And then my other question was for the strategic planning that's getting done for the increased school revenue possibilities during the next legislative session. Is there a possibility for students from the high schools to get involved with that plan?
Please.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk. Yeah, I think I would love your support. I want to make sure that we leverage that correctly, right? So I don't want to put our students in a bad place, but I think there's a place and time for all of that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd love your support.
We've extended the invitation because we would like student representatives on the budget consensus
Correct.
committee in the district. We are meeting
Had to be invite on that. too.
twice this
Yeah.
month, and I would really like to have student voices there because right now there's only adult stakeholder voices, but you're the actual.
We'll extend that back out. I know that we've extended it. I don't know if you got that invite or not, but we'll connect back up with you. Great questions.
Trustee McKee.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment, and I could comment on all these things, but I don't want to make this meeting last all night. I wanted to specifically point out the huge amount of work that you and your team, in particular, Ms. Scanlon Carter, have done on the mental health support centers. I mean, I think everyone in this room kind of knows that the Office of Public Instruction blew up the old model for providing in-school behavioral support. I mean, I might be overstating it, but maybe not. And I am really proud that Helena didn't just sit and take it. I mean, those kind of providers have left the state. We used to have Intermountain in our buildings, and now Intermountain doesn't even exist. So I am really, really proud of us for pushing forward and finding new ways and being creative, even within our budget crisis, to find the resources to plan our way through it. And I'm really proud of what you guys have put together.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I challenged Mr. McKay 2 years ago. I don't think we saw the episode of CSCT doing what it did with changing hands between DPHHS and OPI. There's a lot going on there, and we know that organizations are having a rough time fielding teams of mental health supports in our buildings. And so Mr. McKay and Ms. Carter, through my challenge, they are figuring it out, and we're not relying on other people. We're going to use our own resources as best and leverage others. I would say that Shodair is doing a nice job. Purview is doing a really nice job. Indian Alliance is helping us. There's reasons for that. But one thing we're not doing is sit back and go, and I guess this is the way it is. That's not the way we operate. It's not the way I operate. We're going to figure it out and do what we can for students.
All right. Thank you for the report. It's very complete. All right, next, general public comment. This is the time for comment on public matters that are not on the agenda. Public matters do not include any pending legal matters, private personnel issues, or private student issues. Please do not attempt to address such issues at this time or you'll be ruled out of order. Just a reminder that the board cannot enter into a discussion during general public comment. Do we have any in-person general public comment? People from the public who'd like to speak? You could just state your name and your relationship to the district.
Mafi Funk, and I live here. And I have to add my thanks. It's so many challenges facing our public schools these days, and great start to the new year. I'm sorry you are having to deal with so many policies. I don't think very many of them are going to be what you would like to have happen. The early literacy is one of the few good bills that were passed, although $1.5 million was earmarked for an online preschool, which again is somewhat problematic. But I also have to thank you. Yeah. We can talk offline. And I also want to thank you, Superintendent, for your leadership on HB 332. That's the School Health Trust. That's an issue that has been such a roadblock to teacher retention and particularly for our small school districts. And it's going to be a heavy lift because the double A's have to have buy-in, and most of you have really nice, insurance plans are a lot better. And so it's going to be a matter of trying to look at the greater good, because it's our little districts, our little ones in eastern Montana and around that really need the help. So I'm glad that there's that kind of leadership and those sorts of things. And yes, also the 2025, the Decennial School Funding Commission that did diddly squat 10 years ago. And I hope that we can take this district and people across the state will take some leadership. We mentioned it in the Education Committee today that we really need to look. The school funding program is so complex, and it is trying to get equity, which is the one place you're actually allowed to use that word. But it's not sufficient. It's not sufficient. We need more. We can't keep asking our public to support it. So hopefully they will look at it. They promise they will. So we will help. And then just to end on something, that Handle with Care, thank you so much for your leadership on that. That was should not have been quite as heavy a lift, but it was such a heavy lift. The superintendent had it when his previous position as superintendent, and it's an amazing program. And I'm so glad we got it in our district. So thank you all, and thanks for everything you do.
Thank you, Ms. Funk. Any other public comment in person? Don't see any. Candace, how are we for online public comments? Is there any hands raised? Okay, great. Oh, sneeze. Okay, we'll move on to new business. We have, excuse me, we have 8 of 96. Is that what you said? That we'll start with. So, Ms. Ridgway, thank you in advance.
All of you are. So, do you want to do these one at a time, or just have me move through them and then?
I think explaining each of them would be good.
So we're going to start here with 1025, which is school board member term of office. The change to this is that we need to have in policy that once trustees are elected, verified, and have taken the oath of office, we have 14 days to report that information to the Office of Public Instruction. So it's an existing policy. It has some legal reference citation changes, and that's the distinction. After the election, after the oath, we report who the trustees are, the Office of Public Instruction. Questions? Pretty cut and dried.
That one seems pretty straightforward.
1020 is school board elections, and this is, we have to have the citation or the legal reference to the statute that says when you have a levy or bond election, the form needs to state that there could be an increase in property taxes to include rental costs, and then we need to include the impact on homes valued at 100,000, 200,000, and 600,000. So it doesn't need to be in the policy, but it does need, the citation needs to be there. So that's the existing policy. That's the only change.
I have a question.
Sure.
And you had mentioned this, Barb, last time, and I hadn't thought to ask. So is that new, the rental costs?
Yes,
Okay.
new language.
And that's, okay, that's a new rule.
Right,
Okay.
House Bill 453.
Okay.
The next one is changes to board meetings. We're actually in a good place with this. It's more specifics about how you post or publicize a meeting. Specifically says you have to do it electronically. If your newspaper allows you to publish it, the information without a charge, you put it in the newspaper. That is not the case for us. So we're also going to put it on the front door of the building, which we traditionally did for years, and we're just going back to that. So it's intended to keep the public informed, which I think Candace could give classes on it to other districts. So, and the other change to that one that I want to note is that you can now you don't have to have a meeting in July unless you have pressing business. Did we have a meeting in July?
We did in late June. Last year, we had
Right.
board retreat in July.
Yeah, we pushed it in
did.
because it was
Then
still,
we did a
it was
special
still
board
a
meeting.
law. Yeah.
Okay. Now we're going to uniform grievance procedure. And this new legislation said you have to have an informal process for, before you start the formal process for a grievance procedure. We had an informal process. It's 15 days. But the part that, thank you, that makes this interesting is it's not clear, and Jeff, you can speak to this, it's not clear when that informal process is initiated and that 30-day clock begins. Maybe I wait, I'm still irritated that my freshman, who's now a junior, got a D in PE. Does that start the informal process? I mean, how, there don't seem to be any parameters around a timeline, if you will. And remember that the uniform grievance procedure, doesn't apply to sexual harassment, federal or state issues. Those are dealt with a different way. But it's a complaint generally about something that we've done or are doing. Did I sum that up?
Yeah, Madam Chair, just as we talked about at Policy Committee, and I admittedly haven't gone back and looked at the legislation, but I mean, most of these structures are built, if you're going to have a timeline for initiating a complaint, and you're going to have an informal piece on the front end of it, it normally still just says, you use the informal piece, but if it's not resolved within X amount of time, then you just advance it to a formal one. And this doesn't use the same process anything else with common sense uses. So we're stuck with this thing where it's going to hang out there potentially forever. But as we talked, I think we'll just have to be, more deliberate in our interactions with folks who have complaints, whether they be student or staff or parents or whatever, and try and remember that we need a little closure.
And documenting that this,
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
starting an informal process.
Yeah.
So.
I think, Barb, we were trying to figure out what exactly is a complaint. Like,
Yeah,
if you come in and you say, you gave my kid a D, but they did this work, is that an informal complaint? I mean, that's part of like, is this going to make this into kind of like a nightmare, and that teachers are, anytime a parent is upset about anything, that teachers are going to have to keep documentation.
Because
And that is
potentially it's
just
an
not,
informal. I mean, that's what we're going to have to work through. And I think to Jeff's point, we're going to have to say, are you initiating the complaint process, or you just want to have a conversation. Oh, no, I just want to have a conversation. Then we're going to need to document that. I said, are you initiating the complaint process? No, I just want to bring this to your attention. I mean, it's going to be educating our staff, is what it's going to be. Other questions? We're going to move on then to curriculum development, content, and assessment. There was legislation, which I have actually read through, House Bill 214, which defines now what off-site learning is and what distance learning is. And there's some long story in a small district somewhere far, far away that led to this new legislation. So off-site is defined as an extension of school, apart from school, but still in the district. So it's a program, it's an extension of the school, it's apart from the school, but it's still within the school district. Whereas remote instruction is through virtual learning or distance or online learning. So we might have students attending the Montana Digital Academy, not part of our district, not within our school district. It's at the University of Montana. And if for whatever reason there was the need to make that clear. And so we've done that in our existing policy on curriculum. The next one is our existing policy called Student and Family Privacy Rights. And I can guarantee you're going to see more on this in the months to come. But you will see an opening statement in our existing policy that says, all fundamental parental rights are exclusively reserved to the parent of a child without obstruction or interference by a governmental entity in accordance with the common law, state and federal law, and board policies. So we have, by law now, we have to have that statement in our policy. And this particular policy, we had to address student surveys, and that we have to give parents the right to opt out of student surveys. So you see that on 48 through 51. There were, as I said, there will be changes coming forward related to parental rights that I'm working through right now, but this is the beginning. The next one is 2025 K-12 counseling, which
Sorry, Mr. Dre, I have a question about the last one.
about which one?
About the parental rights. So I'm just guessing that they're getting at maybe some of the initial things that you might do in a classroom, their names and pronouns and things like that. Is there any, I know that it's not uncommon in education for teachers to give like a blank card and say, is there anything about you that we should know? Would that be part of it? Okay, more like a specific type of question.
Well, I think what we're really getting at is like YRBS, those kinds of surveys that ask what are perceived as personal, family-related questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Does this also apply to the clubs and activities within the school?
It will.
Okay.
That one hasn't come
Yeah.
forward yet.
Yeah.
It's in your handbooks. Great question. Yeah. Okay.
Barb, just of note on that, we had asked at the meeting exactly what are the fundamental parental rights, and the state has not actually said that, so that's all we have to go on.
You'll be seeing some of them coming soon to a boardroom near you. And one of them is the one that Willa just asked about now. if Willa wants to join the chess club, she has to have a form filled out by her parents and parent permission. And those forms are in student handbooks, middle school and high school. But then it turns out I started getting calls, well, we have clubs at elementary. So kind of modified it, and now elementary students. And I initially wanted to know if it, we have sort of this 3-tiered. We have school-sponsored clubs like the Spanish Club or the esports club, and then we have service clubs like Key Club, and then we have another layer where you can use our facilities, but you're operating under sort of the facility use agreement. So I'm like, doesn't this just apply to school-sponsored clubs? Wrong-a-runo. It applies to any activity that occurs during the school day, regardless of how you've classified it. So all sports activities require, which already get a parent signature. I've worked with Tim already. They have always had a form where parents have to sign off. But now it's, it's the knitting club, it's the chess club, it's Spanish club. And people are managing it. I mean, it's one more set of paperwork that a class sponsor has to deal with. One of the principals was just talking to me tonight about it. So, right.
So Barb, would that be like a blanket thing, or does it have to be like on the form? Does the parent have to put in each specific club?
Yep. We have that in the handbook, a description of the clubs. So it can't just say chess club. I guess it would say the rights and anyway, we have to list the clubs and then the parents.
So I guess that's adding more papers. I just hope it doesn't penalize students whose parents are busy or don't read
Well,
it. And
it's early to tell yet, but that's one of the things that we'll watch.
you bring that up at some point once you have that form, just to the policy committee, so we can see what that looks like as we actually implement it.
You bet.
I would say that our board reps at Helen Education Foundation last night, they expressed that concern that they think that it could hinder the participation in a lot of our clubs.
Well, it's my impression that there's a lot of fluidity between the clubs, and especially I remember our visit to Helena Middle School. There were so many clubs, and I think sometimes kids kind of bebop between them. So it's going to make it more structured and less fluid, I would say.
This blanket statement, all fundamental parental rights, etc. I recognize that it's not defined what a fundamental parental right is, and I don't think we have any religious activity happening in our schools, but it feels like this would forbid it. Yeah. Sure, I know. It's a wide net. It's hard to know exactly what this is forbidding, but it feels like that might be something that it forbids.
Yeah. Oh, there's one on religion that I'll be bringing forward. So much to look forward to. 2025 just says that the district can utilize career coaches for educational and career counseling, which we already do in our high schools. Both of our high schools have a career coach. This just confirms it in policy. And the last one, again, an existing policy which simply says no staff member may use video surveillance in a classroom without permission of the parent. And we don't use video surveillance in classrooms. We do use video surveillance outside our buildings, in our hallways. We post that we have cameras. But there are times when a teacher, and our teachers are really good about this actually, I get lots of requests, where I'm working on my national boards, I need to film myself teaching in front of the class. They get parental permission for that. They're great about that. The interesting word is surveillance. We aren't surveilling anybody in classrooms. We did have cameras in one of our high school gyms, and we shut those off during the school day and turn them on for events. So that's not a huge change for us.
We did talk about updating the handbook because there are times when it's not surveillance, but it is remote teaching or filming of a, so.
So if we decide we can only have one class and it's at Helena High, but we want Capitol High kids to also attend, we just need to make clear that if you're going to be in that class, you accept the fact that you're going to be videotaped.
Does someone have their hand up? Yes, Trustee Satchery.
Yes, I just was interested in the word surveillance too. So just curious, if I wanted to videotape my students giving presentations, then just so that they could see how they present for their own feedback, is that considered that you have to get parental approval for that also?
That's gray. That's a gray area. I mean, that's not surveillance, but our folks are pretty good about getting permission anyway, especially if they're going to keep the tape, if they're going to show it or the video, show it anywhere else. But I would say that my interpretation, and I'm working on my over-the-counter law degree, is that that isn't surveillance. I'll check with our legal counsel. It's a great question.
I mean, just as a follow-up comment, it seems really problematic if that is included underneath the, concept of surveillance. Just using that term in that broad of a way is really troubling to me.
Good question, Kay. I'll do some follow-up. Okay.
Trustee Cletus.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Barb, on 2025, we had talked about updating the language on line 26 to disability and
oh, and I
mobility
probably
conditions.
didn't catch that.
Yeah.
Right. I will make sure to make that change. On 26, we don't use handicapping conditions. We just use disability.
And could you add mobility, disability and mobility? Thanks.
Got it. Thank you, Linda.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions for Ms. Ridgway? Thank you. All right, we'll move to the consent action items. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Chair Hathorn, I move, oh my gosh, I totally blanked it. I move, adoption of the consent action items?
To accept the consent action items as presented?
Yes, thank you. That sounds even better.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second.
Motion by Trustee McKee, second by Trustee Cletus. Is there any public comment on the consent items? Online? There's not. Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Opposed? Consent actions pass 1, 2, 3, 6-0. Okay, can Trustee Walsh, did we get an answer from it? Trustee Walsh, was that aye on the consent action items?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. Welcome. Okay, 7-0. All right, items for action. You're not out of the woods yet, Ms. Ridgway. Policy 5075.
So this is coming before you. This has had a lot of review. This came before you for first reading, I think, last month. No, actually it was last spring. Time flies. And this is just cleanup work really on this policy. We had another policy that was duplicative and we want to terminate that policy. I don't see it in here. And have you adopt 5075 and terminate 5256, which was redundant. Just something that happened over time. We don't need it. It's all covered in 5075. So termination of employment, just some language cleanup. And then eliminate the redundant policy.
Any questions for Ms. Ridgway on policy 5075? Just confirming that it's complete cleanup and it was done in collaboration with HEA and that we're all.
Yeah, it's
we're
been
all-
through policy
Okay,
committee
great.
many, many times.
Okay, seeing no further questions, do I have a motion for 5075, policy 5075?
I move to adopt 5075 and terminate 5256.
All right. Motion by trustee Vaitklitis. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. We'll give it to the remote person.
That sounds very fair.
Second by trustee Satry. Is there any public comment on policy 5075? Nope. Okay. Any further board discussion before we vote? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next item action is policy 5256, reduction in force.
Term.
I think
Well, that's when we replaced.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
so that's okay, right. So we did them simultaneously. Okay, great.
Consolidated motion track.
All right. Moving on to our reports. Before we move on to our reports, this is an anomaly. We're just a little over an hour in and everyone's feeling pretty fresh. So some of our committee reports haven't even happened. But sometimes at the end of a 3 or 4 hour meeting and we don't really feel like talking anymore, we have to, because we have to remember the purpose of the meeting, of the committee reports, is to really inform the whole board from that particular group that got to get into it in more detail. So just as we go into this new school year, if we're going to be here till 10, we can just be here till 10:30 and we'll be better informed. So don't be afraid to add as much detail as you possibly can. With that in mind, we'll start with our student reports. Ms. Trustee Hernandez, would you like to give us a report on Capitol?
Yes. All right, so the school year at Capitol is off to a positive and busy start. It's homecoming week at Capitol High, and that's complete with various home athletic activities, as well as an assembly, an early release day with a barbecue, and a homecoming dance on Friday night. So, iReady testing for all 9th through 11th graders was last week. Math on Wednesday, reading was on Thursday. As for the seniors, they attended a Senior Year 101 presentation that was followed the next day by a review of expectations for seniors by administration and Justin's presentation and a senior class photo. Bruin Beginnings was a success. We had about 60 link leaders come in a day early and attend a training to help ensure that the freshman first day of school was a success. We will host our annual open house next Wednesday, September 20th from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. And our current enrollment is 1,404 students. And that number has risen from approximately 1,370 students just days before the school year started. We received a lot of new students at the beginning of the school year. All right, thank you.
That's exciting. Questions for Trustee Hernandez? You're going to let her off easy right out of the gates, huh? Thank you very much. I'm sure that as the school year gets going, there'll be more and more topics to bring forward, but thank you. It sounds like a really fun start.
Yes.
Trustee Bishop.
Okay. The same as Capitol, very positive and good start to the school year. Our Bengal beginnings on the 30th of August went really well. We welcomed almost 300 freshmen to Helena High, one of the biggest classes to date, with around 50 link leaders participating in the morning activities, getting the freshmen acquainted with the school. During the last week, the underclassmen completed the fall iReady testing, which spanned over the 6th and 7th. During this time, the senior class ordered the necessities from Jostens, including the cap and gown, and later went into presentations with their counselors about college opportunities coming up quickly. The following day, we had a motivational speaker, Kevin Atlas, come in and give a present to all of the seniors about how we can improve our school and participation in our school. And following that, he had a meeting with all the leaders in our school, including link leaders, NHS, sports captains, and just a general smattering of all the students, where we identified a lot of problems in our, not a lot, but problems like communication and participation, and really worked to find ways to fix those that we can actively do within this year. Along those lines, each sport in our school has started conference competitions. Soccer is in Missoula today. Volleyball has its first home game on Thursday. Football is traveling to Kalispell, and golf will be competing on Thursday and Friday. A little issue with our school right now, our whole science wing has been shut down from the septic system as the lines have been completely cut off due to a leakage into our theater. The water system will be shut off for a couple weeks while they work to fix that, but they do have to fully dig up pipes as they have collapsed in our school. So that does impact things like labs and just bathrooms. We have 2 National Merit semifinalists that will be reported tomorrow from Helena High, and we will be getting leadership meetings running once a month with our principal, Mr. Tennis, and they'll be Wednesday during lunch starting at the 27th, on the 27th.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Trustee Armstrong.
Not a question, but a comment. I just really like hearing that you had a motivational speaker in and that you're kind of proactively trying to work on communication issues, because I think the one thing I miss the most as a board member is I hear from the adults a lot. I don't get an opportunity to hear as much from the students, which, you're the actual reason we're here. So, yeah, and share anything up to us that you feel is pertinent so that we can know about it. And just thank you for all you do. And then what was the time frame on having that repaired? Because that seems kind of important.
Yeah, just within a couple weeks, hopefully. Yeah.
So I was briefed on that this morning. There's a septic line in the science wing that's in grade. They've worked on this for a week trying to explore what options we have. And unfortunately, the break in that line is directly in the middle of a classroom on grade concrete. So the only way that we can get to it this morning's solution is that we have a mini excavator. We'll have to close that classroom down. We shut the water off because when you run a sink or a toilet, it runs through the septic and it's broken, it backs up. So all water's off in that building. We have a mini excavator that actually fits through a door. We're gonna dig concrete, break the concrete out, dig it up, fix it, fill with concrete, put it back together. But that's a week. So Mr. Verrill is working with Mr. Tennis to figure out, displacement of classrooms and what it looks like and moving forward. It's an older building that requires some work. And it's unfortunate that we have water turned off. We would like to have found that this summer, but you don't have students in the building using the facilities, so you don't know it's broken until it gets used. And so unfortunately, first 2 weeks of school, we identified a broken sewer main. Todd's on it.
Thank you for addressing that so quickly, and please pass our sympathy on to the teacher who is in that room and is having to change gears and do the amazing work that teachers do when things go wrong.
And I think they also just a testament to the grit to students. They're displaced in that spot as well. And so teachers make lesson plans assuming that they're going to have water. Pretty basic need, and it's not there, so we have to do it another way. But Steve and Todd are working through it, working with their teachers.
Thank you. Trustee Hernandez.
I would like to quickly bring up an issue that I've heard about from students and teachers alike at Capitol, and I don't know if this is something that's also been an issue at HHS. But I've been hearing recently that iReady testing might not be a good way to assess where students are at because it's not for a grade or there's no reward for it. A lot of students just click through the test and don't, respond. So it's not an accurate representation of where students are at. And I've heard from teachers that they would like there to be an incentive for doing well on the testing or a different way to assess their teaching abilities and where students are at.
Yeah, I think that's a common issue at Helena High, especially during those testing periods. It's just students just want to get the test over with so they can work on something else or do something else. And I know that it's just, like any other standardized test, you get what you put into it, but I don't think students really truly realize that it's such a big benchmark for the schools and to be able to place where they're at and what they need to work on.
We've heard the same thing, and we're addressing that through our team.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yep.
Good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Next, we have Helen Education Association report. Ms. Jane Sean.
Good evening. Okay, so this July, 3 members of HEA attended the NEA Representative Assembly in Orlando. One of our key business items that I wanted to bring up that was approved was to direct NEA to lobby Congress and work with our partners in the education department to update the funding for IDEA. See, I knew it was I said, I know this will make Trustee McKee happy. Yeah, it was a very big discussion. I mean, it needs to happen. So we're going to put the full force of NEA behind that. I don't know what'll happen, but it's, yeah. Yeah. HEA attended all 4 new teacher orientation sessions, as well as the 2 new employee orientations that were held this summer and school year so far. It's a great way for us to introduce potential members to the benefits of union membership. HEA and MFPE hosted a back to school event on the Walking Mall the Thursday before school started. Over 60 people, new and veteran teachers, paraeducators, secretaries, and other union members showed up to have a beverage, eat a meal, and our raffle. Mafia has to pick up her raffle prize, which she hasn't done yet, and celebrate public education. It was quite fun. And then I've been trying to keep members up to date on all of these legislative changes that affect education. So I appreciate Barbara Joy's willingness to educate me. We've had long conversations about forms and this and that. And so she's been a super great resource for me. And then let's see, last thing, we elected 2 new board of director members and many new building reps this year. We held our first board meeting in August, and our first rep council meeting was just this afternoon before this meeting. I've dropped in on most buildings the first couple of weeks of school, but I'll be doing scheduled visits for member conversations beginning next week. So that's my report. Questions?
Thank you, Ms. Sean.
Thank you.
Okay, facilities. Kay, would you like to give that report? Oops, I think you're muted.
Yes, sure. So yes, the Facilities and Maintenance Committee met yesterday noon, and we had a good update from SMA about progress being made on the facilities master planning process. There is another stakeholders meeting that's going to be held at the end of this month, and it seems like the overall timeline was initially scheduled to wrap up a couple months maybe earlier than it actually is going to, but Tim from SMA commented that he thought the couple of extra months that it might take to, really think through all this incredible information that they've amassed about our district facilities and kind of sort through responses and ideas about the different options that are available, that it's definitely worth, extending this timeline for a couple of months. So that was the first part of our meeting. The second part of our meeting, Todd Verrill walked us through the summer work that had been done by the facilities team, and it was inspiring. It was admirable. They worked hard. They got a lot of things done. From my perspective, it sounded like they worked not only really hard, but really smart. And so I don't have right in front of me the number of projects they completed, but maybe one of you will be able to plug in that number. But they did a lot of work in our elementary schools, in our middle schools, in our high schools, ranging from, this was a very small, but I said in the meeting, I was glad it was mentioned, cleaning up the pigeon poop, to replacing roofs, doing lots of flooring projects, to creating some of those clinical, on-site mental health areas for our students. So just a lot of good work that was done. We have new tennis courts at Capitol High. So that's my report from that meeting. And I would just ask, are there other things that that other people who, other trustees who are there want to add in? Did I miss something important?
I don't think you missed anything important, but since you're not here, that packet is in our green folders, and it is very impressive. I think it's worth a drive by the Capitol tennis courts, and there was some bragging about the new paint. It's at Fort Georgian, so if you want to go check out our facilities and all the work that they've done, there's some information in here.
That's a good point. Trustee Satry, I think Candace sent you the PDF as well, so you can have that as just. I think one thing that I heard, there were a lot of projects. I just gave Todd a hard time. One, he wasn't here during the septic line comment because I was going to bring him up for information there. Two is that I think they accomplished 4 or 5 projects or something around that line. Kidding, there was a lot of projects. But what we did here in all of their work was how well they work together. That in that meeting we heard that and Todd was very complimentary of his team, and so I'm proud to have Todd on our team. But he's also putting together a really great culture around our facilities and maintenance team. So I think that is due respect to his leadership.
Thanks for adding that. Very well said. Absolutely.
Thank you, Trustee Satry. Next, Budget and Finance, Janet. Trustee Armstrong.
Okay, so it's really 2 committees. It's the regular budget and finance, and then it's budget consensus. Budget met today. The main thing is we're pretty steady right now. There's no significant unanticipated expenses. Janelle was able to report that we, I think mainly from transportation, we're able to put 1.3 back into the interlocal fund. However, caveat, we are spending money from the interlocal this year to support the time frame to figure out a better longer term budget for the future. So kudos to the district for being able to do that, but that do not anticipate that money being there at the end of the year. Then another thing, Trustee Hindon, I'm going to call on him. He has kind of unique perspective that I think can help illuminate kind of why we are in the situation we're in terms of budgetary constraints right now. So I will turn it over because I feel that sharing this history would just be very helpful for all the trustees.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Trustee Armstrong. Yeah, I can't remember exactly what I said at the meeting, but the context in which it had come up was that when I was on the board last time and we started a process in 2018-19 of hiring a consultant who's a very experienced school business official from Kalispell School District about trying to build a model so that we could see what was coming. And my point was that at that time, the fear was, and the unknown to us was, we were losing 400 kids out of our high school district. I mean, that's a huge chunk of student A and B loss out of a district. And what was that going to do to our budget situation, and tried to build a model so that we could kind of see what was coming, forecast what was coming, and try and plan for it. And then I went off the board in 20. We hadn't fully completed that. We built the very first basic framework of that model that we could start using, and that Janelle had, and work forward. And I've come back, and I kind of, my question was, when I left, we were really worried about the high school. Now I'm back, and the real problem for us is the elementary district, where we didn't lose any kids. We have a high school district where we've lost all the kids we were planning on losing to East Helena. But the high school budget is relatively, I mean, it's healthy relative to the elementary budget. And I just wanted to kind of get my head around if I understood why that kind of was the situation. And it's a combination of things, but it all went back to how really, flabbergasted I was even in 2019 when Josh, Assistant Superintendent McKay, had started digging into numbers. And that first chart we saw, I mean, our enrollment in this school district has not moved in 20 years in the elementary. It is essentially a flat line. And the school funding model in Montana doesn't let you do a lot with flat enrollment. So much of your ability to grow things, expand programs, and that sort of thing, you've got to have growing A and B. I mean, and then so that's, in districts like a Bozeman or Belgrade and those kind of places, it covers up the fundamentals. The model feeds more and more money into the system because you have more and more kids, but we've been struggling with the same thing we're struggling with now, and by all appearances will continue to struggle with, which is flatline enrollment in the elementary. And that, to me, was just kind of what I'm beginning to recognize as I come back here, is that really is coming home to roost, is that the remaining pieces of the model, if your A and B isn't moving, your kid count isn't moving, your revenue isn't moving, and all of your expenses, we all know they're moving, and they're not moving backwards. And yeah, you get inflationary adjustments and that sort of thing, and the entitlement and that sort of, but we all know, and we'll talk about as we go through this whole process. I mean, the cost of technology, all these things have changed drastically, and yet, I mean, I just think it's a big point that folks in the community are going to have to understand, is that we're just getting to a space where we can't continue to run things the way we've run them for years when our enrollment doesn't move. And there's certain things, the model, that funding model that's been out there now for, we were talking today, longer than that, probably even 30 some years now, of just the basic entitlement and then per student payments and some other components. But at a certain point, that doesn't let you run. For example, on the elementary side, it doesn't let you run small K-5 elementaries. It doesn't. I mean, again, if you're in an exploding enrollment environment, maybe you can get away with running smaller schools for a while, but at a certain point, the model doesn't let you. It's not because you get to make a value judgment about, I like a small K-5 better than I like a grade level school better than that. I mean, that was the other point. I said, I mean, people, in other places, they've gone through this. I mean, and they've gone through it before us. I mean, Kalispell went from neighborhood elementaries to grade level schools. Havre went to grade level schools because things changed for them. They didn't have the enrollment to feed those models and feed those schools that were built. And frankly, all of those were all built under a fundamentally different school funding model back in the foundation program days. So it was just kind of a way for me to try and get my head around what I haven't got my head around yet coming back, is, really the struggle we're going to have on the elementary district side. That I've come back and we're kind of, it's like, well, we know we've got facilities issues on the high school side, but the budget side of the high school has not proven to be the problem that we thought, that I saw coming as a trustee in 2018, 2019. Now I come back as a trustee in 2023, and it's the problem we really didn't see coming at the magnitude we have it now. So.
Thank you. I mean, I found that very illuminating, and so I hope the other trustees do. So I wanted everyone to hear that discussion. And the fact is, given current housing prices in Helena, we are not going to be attracting young families with, yet to have kids or really young kids because you simply can't afford to buy a house in this area unless you're more established and older children or children gone from the nest. So, I mean, it is something we need to think about. So thank you for that. The other one is Budget Consensus Committee. We will be meeting later this week on Thursday at 4, I believe, and then again later this month. Trustees, you get an email at some point from the superintendent, because at each meeting we break out into small groups, and I thought it would be helpful to share whatever issue we're talking about with the other trustees so that you're kind of up to date on how the stakeholders are feeling on certain matters. And then Superintendent Welch went over really well. I think that the talk we got from Pat McCracken, it was just how he presented it. It takes a very complex subject and makes it visual. So I thought that was helpful for everybody there. So we'll just continue moving forward with that. Other than that, nothing really. I think we are getting closer to doing more than kind of laying the foundation and doing teamwork and then discussing, whatever kind of present or hidden issues there are so that we can build the team, because clearly to be a consensus committee, we have to work together and reach consensus. So that's kind of where we are with that.
Thank you, Trustee Armstrong. Any further questions on budget?
I've got a question. Trying to wrap my mind around this very complex issue. So when you say the high school has a healthy budget, can you elaborate what that means when I'm hearing
it's healthy relative to the elementary? I mean,
Okay.
it is not in as dire. It's not as dire a condition in terms of what we're looking at down the road as far as the ability to at least fund it as it's structured now. It's the access it has to its revenue sources aligns better with its needs for what we have now than the elementary is going to over time. And like the other variable there is that the elementary is just a bigger operation, more students, bigger budget. But yeah, I mean, now it's not in, I'm not saying it's not healthy.
Okay,
I mean,
that's what
no,
I'm hearing.
No
Student rep talking about like sewage system and stuff. And
it's not healthy in any respect, and it's still, it's still in need of the same focus that we're going to have to give to the elementary side in terms of diversification of revenue sources and that sort of thing. But, it's got the same problem. I mean, if you get your enrollment's flat, it's flat. You don't have flat enrollment in the K-8 and expanding enrollment in your 9-12. I mean, it's all tied together and it all rolls through the system. But it's just that when we set out to start planning and thinking about that was really, holy smokes, we're going to have a real problem here because of the loss of that many kids out of the funding model. And really now I've come back and it's like really going to have a bigger problem on the elementary side. And it's the combination of the costs and the flat enrollment. But yet neither of them are in a good space.
Thank you for the clarification.
Well, I remember working through that process, and Assistant Superintendent McKay, the whole team has done a lot of work to make our systems more efficient so that they're more affordable. But I remember one comment that was made is the fact that the high school is, by and large part, has the two buildings. It's easier to work with. We do have PAL and Access and some of those others, but it didn't just magically happen.
Yeah.
There was a lot of work to get it healthy, but it was a little easier task without having the student body spread out so far, which is just more of what high school is. And then, of course, we have more small schools than most school districts, but we're not the only ones.
Janelle, can you remind me, it was $8,000 per high school student, and what was the elementary pupil funding per student? 6. Okay, so that right there is a difference. And then you're going to have to correct my terminology. It's not building grant, but we get
Basic entitlement.
What?
The basic entitlement.
Basic entitlement, but also per building, don't you get,
Yeah, not per building. So basic entitlement allows, so every district in the high school would get roughly 350,000 basic entitlement, and then A and B, $8,000 a head. And then there's a complicated formula. The more students you have, the less the 8,000 you get of each one. But it's your basic entitlement's about $350,000 per high school district. Your elementary district is 50,000. So if you run 12, 11, 10 buildings in your elementary versus 1 or 2, certainly you got difference in students in your A and B, and so you get $6,000 a kid instead of, but the operations of that, of how many, administrators and counselors and librarians and teachers and everything else under that, that is where we are focusing our efforts and our attention to. Does the formula work for a district with lots of buildings? I think that's the question, and we're exploring that.
Yeah. Plus, the high school is 7 times what an elementary school is, so you can see why, even though we are still in a shortfall for high school, it's not quite as bad because the initial start is better for high school.
Just as we go through the budgets, and school financing is difficult. There's just a reminder, and we just updated today. I think Barb just finished it. Is a Citizen's Guide to School Finance, and it's a document that we produced last year. We have it this year. Remember, there's 9 different budgeted funds, several unbudgeted funds, but when we're talking about Helena High and we have a septic issue, that's not tied to necessarily our budget in general fund. All right, that's a building reserve, so we could have a lot of septic issues, but that doesn't mean that's our general fund perhaps. So it's not an indicator if our buses are not running well. That's not a general fund, that's a transportation fund. So we don't want to dovetail a lot of these other concerns or things that could happen with our general fund. What Mr. Hendoyen is talking about, and really our budget consensus, is basically around our general fund that pays salaries, lights, insurance, textbooks, paper, all of that. And that's really where our focus is. That's the one that we're needing to fix.
Okay. So is then the solution that we're working more towards changing the funding model or trying to grow enrollment in elementary schools?
Yes.
Both.
Trying to all avenues.
And we have equal control over each
And
one.
we can't control the funding model, as you've heard it described tonight, is by and large the school funding. That's state law. We can't change it.
Right.
We're really stuck with that. But Rex and his team are turning over every stone to try to eke out, just sort of boiling the fat out of everything, and also looking at new and other ways to bring money in that are not so hemmed in by the state school funding model. There's not an infinite amount of lanes available to us.
But also what Superintendent Wells was saying was that, if you have a one-room schoolhouse, you're going to get an entitlement for that school district, which you would get for our whole 11 schools, which would be equal, which, there's some validity to that. Otherwise, all of our little districts wouldn't even have a place to be. So we have to balance that out. But we're looking at more advocacy at the state level for promoting the needs of the AA's. So I think that we're kind of stuck with it, but not without trying to do some action. And I think that was where, I'm guessing that's what you said at the beginning of the meeting, where students might want to be involved, and maybe at some point further down the process we can work that in as well.
Thank you.
Did I put you out there to dry?
No, not at all. My brain's going towards when we sit down and we come down and visit, and maybe we spend 15 minutes and try to go through what that might look like. Yeah. Remember, from the student's perspective, I want to make sure that that our efforts is not to try to reduce the amount of opportunities that you have. So whatever that might be, fine arts, music, PE, AP classes, that's not where I want to go. I would rather be able to find revenues that we can continue those rather than trying to cut our way out of it. So your advocacy question is right on point, is that we need to find revenue sources so that we can continue to do what we do, because I don't really want to go down the other opportunity of reducing. Right. At some point, this board in front of us they have got to have a balanced budget. And so that's not an option. It will be balanced, but we have to find out how we can get there. That's the work that we're doing now.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Really good discussion around budget. I'm just gonna have you keep going, Janet.
Okay.
Policy, I know we've talked quite a bit about that already tonight.
That's pretty easy. So the work that we did, you either read about or you voted on tonight. And I think we pretty much got all the other type of issues we brought up surrounding the policies, whether it's what is video surveillance, how do we address that in the handbook, or the other things. One trend I am noticing, though, is with some of these new laws coming from the state, there's terms in them that I've just noted with increasing frequency are not very well defined. So it's going to be a little murky for us because they haven't defined it, so we don't know exactly what we're dealing with, but rest assured the district is trying to be as conservative legally to make sure they hit everything as they can.
Questions or comments for regarding policy? All right, next is teaching and learning.
All right.
Trustee McKee.
So we met on September 6th, and I'm going to summarize, although I do have voluminous notes. If I get anything wrong in my summary, luckily we have Ms. Hess here who can jump in and correct me. So it was an overview of sort of what happened over the summer, and a lot happened over the summer in terms of teaching, sort of professional development for our teachers. I mean, basically teachers don't really take the summer off. I mean, they do a little, but not as much as people think. One big emphasis was, and this has been kind of an ongoing issue, is we have our math curriculum, and the iReady tests have identified, one of the things that those tests do is that they sort of keep drilling until they find a gap in knowledge, and then try to find the things that students aren't knowing so that we can backfill or change it up or correct it. And our math curriculum, there's been some identified problems with it in terms of things that kids aren't really learning. Plus, it's like you buy it for a term, and the term is running out. And there's been a lot of desire and research and so on to try to find a replacement, both in terms of improving the quality, but also just because we need one. At this very moment, we're not buying all new math curriculum, but there is this big effort into Eureka Math, which is I think is it New York State? Is that who did it? See, I didn't hear that, but I know what you said. Yes, it was New York State did it. There's a free version out there. We're using it, and students or teachers were taught in it. There is manipulatables part of it, but not consumables. I could have that completely wrong. Anyway, there was a big effort around that. Another major effort over the summer was finding ways to maintain the coaches that we have in the buildings and also build it out for math coaching and have that for K-12 throughout. We have the literacy grant that, so we've had some kind of coaching in the schools that were affected by the grant, and that's been built out to, don't quote me on this, but I think it's every school. That was supplemented with some COVID money, so there was coaching in every single school, and you saw it much more intensely, I think, at the coaching element and the instructional framework element at the elementary level. So high school students might not have, you were seeing pieces of the instructional framework that have been built into every single school, but like these WIN groups and that kind of like really on the ground work that the coaches did, you guys probably didn't see, but it was out there. And so there was this, I think there's a TOSA, I'm kind of skimming through my notes here and I'm trying to pull it all together. There's been just this big effort to expand coaching, expand it specifically into math, and then build a system that can keep running after all the external monies are done, which would be ESSER probably, and the literacy grant. So that work happened, and that's huge. I mean, those instructional coaches and the instructional framework have just done so much. It was probably my favorite thing that happened in COVID. It was a huge and awesome effort, and it brought about a lot of good change. So that happened. And let's see. That was the big stuff. I might have been missing something, but that was the big stuff. Teaching and Learning is an awesome committee. I mean, it's where we hear about all of the efforts that go into like pedagogy and the intent and the depth that goes into educating a Helena student. It is so much more refined. It's not like I went to school. It's just so built out, and there's also like this constant spinning wheel of improvement and all these assessments. They just go around and around to find the thing that's missing and then find the thing to fix it and then reassess and keep going. I mean, it's a really broken sewer lines notwithstanding. This district like literally moves mountains, and you see it in Teaching and Learning.
Questions, comments? Trustee Armstrong?
I just want to thank Caitlin and Jocelyn for doing this. I just wish more students could be involved in this. I mean, on page 3, something I didn't know, advisory groups composed of CTE teachers and community employers meet annually to discuss the needs of employers entering the workforce. I mean, I don't think the public knows how much time and effort is invested into all these different career paths. I've had, all my kids got dual credit, and it was all accepted at private colleges. Okay, that's savings of a couple thousand for me. I've had kids get internships through the district. Again, that helps you with whatever path you're going to go down. So much work is done. I look forward to sharing this with the community so they know how hard we work on this. So thank you. I did have a question. So on the kind of the school tour at the beginning of the year, I tried to seek out some like 2nd, 3rd grade teachers because I wanted to hear from them, like with the disconnect between what they're doing in the classroom and our scores. And I know we're limited in like the testing that we can do. Do we feel like iReady is testing what it should be at that point? And so we just need to change our curriculum to reflect that? Or is it also maybe iReady is testing some stuff that we do later in the year and we're okay with that? I was just wondering your thoughts on that.
There's both.
Okay.
But that's what it's called us. The latter, what you said.
You want to, I think actually Kay is probably not going to be able to hear you. So if you don't mind, since the question was directed right at you, Ms. Hess, I'd love for you to come up to the podium.
And just while she's coming in, just to clarify, so iReady is our own internal assessment. That's us looking at ourselves. SBAC is and ACT, those are the state assessments. The goal, if you want to do well on the SBAC, is to make sure that iReady lines up with the SBAC.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a little bit nuanced. I think we're fleshing out our comprehensive assessment system because there's some things in there too of testing fatigue that can play as a variable in there. But going back to your question, iReady can tell us if we're teaching our curriculum in the correct order. So, you know, we can say, oh, the students didn't perform well on that. Well, I know I haven't taught it yet. And sometimes we're okay with that because we know when we get to the championship game at the end of the year, we've taught it all. And that's what matters. And sometimes we have to dig deeper into that curriculum and really understand those standards and see, are we teaching the standards out of order? Sometimes they build on each other. So we have to understand, you know, open that and dig a little deeper and mine down into that data to figure out what's going on with how our students are performing versus what our curriculum may look like. With Common Core standards, these assessments, even though they're different tools by different companies with proprietary questions and calculations in there, they're all aligned to the same standards. And that's what's most important. And that takes a lot of the guesswork out there, that it's not a shot in the dark. They are all criterion referenced now. So you have the standards lined up here and the student kind of trucking along. And so it's all about how many standards does that student know by the end of the year. That's what we're measuring. So we're measuring the student against the standards, not students against students, making this lovely bell curve that we're usually familiar with.
Thank you.
We got a Thanks, Caitlin.
Maybe a question.
Yeah.
It's more of a comment. I would just really like to take this opportunity to emphasize that I don't think iReady testing is a very good reflection of where teachers and students and curriculum are at. And just as an example of this, I have heard my classmates in an AP Physics 2 class, laughing over how they skipped through questions on the math test and tested at a first grade level.
Mm-hmm.
And I just really don't think it's an accurate reflection of where students are at.
Well, I think, and sorry if I hijacked your answer, but I've heard the administration talking about it as potential changes in the upper levels, but it's a different story at different grade levels. You're not going to have our lower elementary doing that, for instance. So I think it's a trick of figuring out which groups to continue and which groups that might have something different.
Yeah, and there's even differences within your grade level too, right? Those students taking physics are on grade level, right? And so it doesn't, they're going to keep performing on grade level with that test, right? But if you think about students within your grade that are still really struggling because maybe they've had gaps in their learning, that can inform the teachers quite a bit about the gaps that need to be filled. What we need to do is flesh out the assessment system 9 through 11 and really figure out what's our end target, what are we trying to prepare you for, and how can we assess you along the way to make sure that we are preparing you for that end target. Yeah, but I do appreciate the feedback tonight. I've been listening, so thank you.
I just want to say that I'm thinking more of the, I know Rex mentioned it, Superintendent Wells mentioned it in his newsletter, that we have some lagging scores in our elementary math, and I just really want to applaud the whole district approach for, grabbing onto that and looking at it as a challenge. And I actually think it's kind of fun when you see something that you need to improve and all the things that you can do to make that improvement. And it sounds like they did a great job going and reaching out to teachers and administrators, building administrators, and finding out where the holes were and which groups were doing better than others. And correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a kind of a volunteer opportunity for teachers to jump ahead and try to get a start on it and improve their classroom teachers. And I believe that 90% of the teachers wanted to do that.
I was going to say 80%. Jocelyn has the number, but I was going to say 80%. You said 90%. We'll meet at 85%, but the teachers did. And I think it's a testament to how hard they work and how much they realize that, our curriculum isn't aligning to what we should be preparing our students for. And I'll tell you what, those teachers are taking it on with a whole new reading curriculum this year too. And so it's impressive. It's really impressive and remarkable what those teachers are doing in K-5 this year.
So extend our thanks both to the district leadership for starting that process and doing what's best for kids, and for the teachers for going above and beyond and doing new reading and really putting their heart into improving their math instruction with kind of supplementary materials from Eureka.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
If I could just throw one thing at her. I mean, you'd mentioned, Trustee Armstrong, that there is some frustration that what's happening in the classroom doesn't line up to the test scores. It's really worth noting just what these common score, the rigor built into these Common Core standards. It is not. We could put ourselves on a bell curve and we would feel fabulous. And we grew up on a bell curve and I felt fabulous. When these, and you know more about it than I do, Chair Hathorn, but when these Common Core standards were developed, there's at or above basic and then at or above proficient. What you always read about is the proficient. Well, the national average is only 35% is quote unquote proficient. It really makes you wonder, what is proficient? You know what I mean? Why are we're not a nation in the bottom 50% of the world? Like what is this? What went into that standard? I mean, in Montana, we're 80% above basic, and that's pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that whole testing scheme, and then there's also like the ACT, which is not looking at Common Core, but it is a different way of looking. Like, you're done now. This was the championship game. Where are you at? In Montana, the ACT is a required test. Every single kid takes it. That's not everywhere. Our average score is like 19.2. Helena's above that, I think. What are we, 20, 22?
21, I think, is what I saw the other day.
So in Helena, we're doing like the national average, but consider who takes that test. In most parts of the country, it's only kids going to college. So we can look at this proficiency thing that grew out of No Child Left Behind and school choice and whatever else was baked into that. And it's awesome in terms of moving the needle educationally, but in terms of do we feel like we're failing, it doesn't tell you anything, because we are 1000% not failing.
Yeah.
So there is kind of like, it's a weird world to be living in when the standard of rigor is above and beyond what any generation of Americans has ever, ever, ever done. So that's just kind of a sidebar.
They're aggressive. Trustee Cletus.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Luna, I really appreciate you saying what you said twice, because I've heard that too. And I just love how vocal you are. And I think it helps give us a perspective that we don't hear. Same to you, Willa. So thank you.
All right, we ready to move on? Health benefits. Did you have a meeting, Kay?
Yes, we did. And you might think the Health Benefits Committee with issues that are a little more peripheral than what we were just talking about, but very important nonetheless. So we met on August 31st, and we had a very singular focus for this last meeting. It focused on our stop loss insurance. And so this is just a quick explanation here. We had 8 really high cost claims that hit our stop loss last year. And so we were looking at increasing premiums for our plan's stop loss insurance. The committee looked at a number of options, and then we discussed and voted to increase the stop loss amount from $165,000 to $175,000. And what that means is that when any individual on the plan incurs claims over now $175,000, our stop loss insurance kicks in to cover that amount. Unum is our stop loss insurer. So we're staying with the same insurer, but we have this different, we've made an adjustment in our plan. That adjustment's going to cost the plan about $525,000 in a premium increase compared to last year. You know, we were faced with other options that involved higher increases, but we think we maintained a pretty strong stop loss coverage for the plan, and we're going to save about $125,000 up front. That will allow next year's plan increases moderate. So all of these figures impact the plan. They don't impact, you know, the what the district has to contribute to the plan. So it's all happening within the plan itself. But that's what our meeting involved.
Thank you, Trustee Satry. Questions? Trustee Armstrong?
Trustee Satry, does that impact the I don't know if the term is reserves or whatever? Is that going to eat into the?
I imagine it will impact those reserves. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we're still, and for a real full and informed response to that question about how much it will eat into reserves, I think we're still, we might have just completed or are still in the open enrollment period. What are our numbers going to be? You know, all of those things have to be sorted out. But that's where, if need be, that's where it will come from.
Yeah.
Trustee
Yep,
Hendry.
Madam Chair, Trustee Satry. So if I understood, we were up against an increase. I mean, we were facing an increase in our stop loss because of our loss experience. And it sounds like that the option that's been selected was to basically bump the limit backwards on it, meaning we will eat more of the loss up from 165 to the 175 window on the plan side. But even that movement, even with that movement and sort of decreasing the level of coverage, we're still looking at a pretty healthy increase on the premium side, another $500,000. So, I mean, it must have been, the options without an increase must not have been very attractive, to say the least, if we're still going to take a $500,000 hit on the stop loss premium increase and we reduced our coverage a bit. So, I mean, that's the nature of that beast, but I'm just curious. That's what I understood was going on.
Yes, you said it very well. And we were also advised by, our consultant, Alliant, who, works with us, that we weren't taking a huge risk by moving. We were at 165 going up to 175. When you looked at the numbers of people or number of, parties that were involved in our high claims, we're not running a substantial risk to bump up against that much, very often. So yeah, we probably won't increase those numbers. Of course, you don't know. I mean, that's the risk that you take when you make that decision.
I think putting that in perspective, so we will bump that up. We'll have less coverage. We have a $575,000 increase to that, roughly, on top of nearly a $450,000 premium that we had on the top. So I think it's a $1.1 million stop loss carry this year. That will be important to note as we move through HB 332.
Yes, I think absolutely all the pieces to the puzzle, which, it's a complicated puzzle about all these different pieces and parts that have to be considered and balanced out. Yeah, for sure. Just one quick correction. The addition here was 525, not 575,000.
Thank you, Trustee Satry. All right, the last two are my reports, and there was no wellness committee. I know that's on the calendar coming up pretty quickly, so I'll have a report next month, and no MTSBA meeting either. So that's the end of our reports. Upcoming meetings. Tuesday, September 26th, a board work session, time and location to be determined. We will get that out to you as soon as possible. We have been working on what is the best approach. Last year, we had our work sessions at noon at lunch. That was good for some things and not so good for some things. So we're looking at probably a hybrid approach this year where some of the meetings will be in the buildings at noon and the other ones will be here in the Lincoln Center at 5:30 at night. So you should be hearing that pretty soon. Tuesday, October 3rd is policy, 12 p.m. Wednesday, October 4th, teaching and learning, 12 p.m. Monday, October 9th, facilities and maintenance, 12 o'clock. Tuesday, October 10th at 11 a.m. is our executive committee meeting, which goes right into our full board meeting at 5:30 that night. Also Tuesday, October 10th is the budget committee at 12 o'clock. And just about a month out, Tuesday, October 25th would be our next board work session. So those are the upcoming meetings. Any further board comments before we adjourn? Trustee Satry.
I just also want to mention that there's going to be a celebration of life for Lois Fitzpatrick. And it is September 29th from 4 to 6 at the Lewis and Clark Library Community Room. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that that was happening.
Thank you, Trustee Satchery. That would be great if trustees and some of the admin, we'll get that added to our newsletters as well. Thank you for sharing that. Trustee Armstrong.
Just want to add, there will be at least 2, maybe 3 budget consensus committee meetings that aren't on this schedule.
Okay.
Just so we know.
Those are closed with the group though, right?
They are generally closed with the group, I think. Yeah. If we can get some student representation there, that would be awesome. I know you guys have a lot on your plate already. But would love to have those voices there.
Trustee Cletus.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And I wanted to add, there's going to be a community food forum run by the Kids Nutrition Coalition on October 10th. I believe it's in the evening. I'm wondering if that can be in the newsletter. It's for our new school nutrition program. Robert Worthy will be part of that. And we're inviting parents and community members to talk about.
If you could send either Barb or
Yeah.
Karen and I some details on that, we'll get it.
I met with that committee today.
Oh, you did?
I'm
Okay.
the new Brian.
Okay.
And so the food forum, which I think will be very informative, they'll do 2 sessions. They'll do one at noon and then they'll do one in the evening. They'll do them here, and the publicity that they've prepared should be out Thursday, and then we'll push it out to everybody. We'll put it in newsletters and on our social. So
thanks, Barb.
yeah, they've done a great job.
We'll need to get you a hat
Lots of them?
Yeah.
if you're going to be the Brian. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no further comments, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Still daylight.
Just barely.
Thanks, Kay.